Everybody, welcome back to Vikings Happy Hour. We have Judd Zulgad on this week. We're talking Vikings scouting combine, Kwesi, Kevin O'Connell interviews, and a huge announcement tonight for Climbing the Pocket. So grab your drink and enjoy the show.
Welcome to Vikings Happy Hour, where we mix our favorite beverage and talk of your Minnesota Vikings.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Vikings Happy Hour. I'm your host, Matt Anderson. We have Ryan Ortega tonight as our co-host as usual. Dave is behind doing all the producing, and you've seen him here before. You can see him over on Score North as well. It's Judd Zulgad coming in as Superman for the evening as our guest was taken away to jury duty. Judd, how are you on this fine Wednesday evening?
From the bullpen, I'm fine. Like the bullpen cart, right? I'm being brought in the cart itself with the helmet on top. And I'm glad to be here and substituting. And I just hope I can add to the reckless speculation nature of this edition of Vikings Happy Hour.
Are you all warmed up? Are you ready to go? I mean, I know you guys are probably talking all day, you, Phil, and Declan over there.
I've been warming up all day long. Exactly right. I got my hot takes. I got my hot quarterback takes, my hot Kirk Cousins takes, my hot Kevin O'Connell takes, Kwesi. I mean,
okay.
The combine's great. I love the combine. If nothing else, because the amount of just reckless speculation that gets thrown around on a daily basis is just so much fun to discuss and to churn through.
And it just never stops. Like this time of year, every week or every day, an hour, I feel like we get new news. So it's awesome. I agree. Ryan, I'm going to hold off on introducing you and see how you're doing. And I think you know why. Climbing the Pocket has a very special announcement to make tonight. So, Dave, I'll let you kind of lead us in here, and then I'll...
We have a Climbing the Pocket special announcement.
Whoa.
We're missing some cameras here.
Yes, we are, but we can bring that back. Not a big deal.
We can swap some people around. It's okay.
We can do that. We have the technology.
Let me know when you're ready, Dave.
I will. Hey, we can go off schedule. We know how.
Absolutely.
It's not a big deal for us.
Yeah.
We can go off script.
And just want to thank all the listeners who are watching and listening in live. Appreciate you all being here for this special announcement.
So I am honored to give this news on behalf of our founder and co-founder Jason Brown and Miles Gorham, that effective today, Climbing the Pocket is now sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing Company out of St. Paul, Minnesota. So you will see them. Yes. Round of applause. You will see them sponsored on these shows, and a perfect show to announce it on. It's Vikings Happy Hour. We drink here, and so Ryan, what do you have tonight for Vikings Happy Hour? What are you drinking on this fine Wednesday evening?
Well, in honor of this great announcement here, Lake Monster provided us with some delicious beer. So we got Rare Species #1, which from all accounts, it looks like an IPA that's going to be delicious with some fruit notes in there. So I'm really excited to try it and get this sponsorship on its way. So the first crack.
There we go.
Has been had.
It is Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm drinking the same thing Ryan is tonight over at Lake Monster. You can find a bunch of their beers over there. Right now, they're doing like a Girl Scout cookie kind of theme as well. So make sure you head over to Lake Monster and try some of their beers. Dave is excited, but it's bittersweet for him because he's in Texas. So it's a lot more difficult to get the beer down to him. So we will work our magic and get
I
you some
can't
beer.
wait.
Uh,
I mean, I
yeah.
love my IPAs, and I can't wait to try Lake Monsters. I was looking at their website. They've got IPAs, double IPAs. They've got stouts.
Yes.
They've got just about everything. They've got a wheat beer. It all looks absolutely delicious. And I can't wait to talk to the brewmaster himself about some of the super secrets that they stick in to make their beer so extraordinary and so rare, just like the monster in the lake, whether it be Nelly over in Scotland or some of the other ones around the world. It's rare, but it's only from Lake Monster out of St. Paul, Minnesota.
There is a lot more news to come with this sponsorship. You'll hear about it more, um, from myself, from Miles, from Jason, and some of these other shows. But it, yeah, that is the breaking news this evening. So we are super excited here at Climb in the Pocket to partner with them, and more news to come. With that being said, we have a full show for you guys this evening. Like we kind of alluded to, the combine is underway. There's lots of news, so there's many different avenues we could take this. I think the first one I want to do is talk about Kwesi's presser yesterday at the combine, and I'll defer to you first, Judd. Were they it's kind of hard to read between the lines, but you can definitely pick up on some vibes that people are saying, or you can just kind of read the room a little bit. Is there anything you're taking away from Kwesi's presser yesterday at the scouting combine?
So O'Connell and Kwesi both did press conferences at the combine at the podium. Kevin went today, Kwesi went yesterday. But I think what was more intriguing is probably the quotes I saw that surfaced from both of them did side sessions with the local beat people. And that's where it felt like the things at the podium were more national people asking questions about philosophies and, building a team. And not that stuff's not good, it's fine. But that stuff to me is not what Vikings fans are after. What Vikings fans want to know is, what are you doing with your team in particular? Let's name names and let's get to the heart of the discussion, which, of course, the main talking point is Kirk Cousins. I found it very interesting that both O'Connell and Kwesi, and especially Kwesi, talked about, we're looking forward to working with Kirk. We think Kirk can do a lot of things. O'Connell talked about surrounding Kirk with the best possible players and personnel and decisions to get his play to where they think it can be. But Kwesi also said in the midst of an answer on, and I think it was with the Beat People on Tuesday, he said, we will do what's best for the Minnesota Vikings, and Kirk will do what's best for Kirk. And I can't help but focus on that part of a quote. And here's what I think has transpired. And this is where we have to remove like sort of the debate about Kirk, because there's passion on both sides, and just go to what I think, guys, is really the business of football. So it's pretty clear to me that Kwesi and Kirk's agent, Mike McCartney, had a sit down at some point pre-combine. And shortly after that, it's also clear that that's where the reports came from, that Kirk is not going to take a pay cut. And so Kirk would sign an extension, and he would certainly take some of the cap hit off his 2022 hit. But it sounds like he also said, I want a market deal against what's going to be the new salary cap in 23. That's approximately a base salary of $40 million. So when Kwesi said this, we will do what's best for the Vikings, and Kirk will do what's best for Kirk, I think that is a non-passionate reference to, if Kirk Cousins is going to demand this type of contract, we can't do it, because we also can't build a team around him that's going to make up for his shortcomings potentially. I think it's also why in his appearance on CCL last week with Chad Hartman, Kevin O'Connell became much less willing to say on opening day of training camp, Kirk Cousins is our guy. Not because he doesn't want him, but because there might be the reality of a trade of Kirk if they can trade him. And so this isn't not like this big debate about Kirk Cousins is great or Kirk is not great or Kirk stinks. This is really about the business. And I think that both of these guys at the right price would welcome the chance to work with Kirk. Key thing is the right price. And so that's where I sort of parsed apart the comments from the past week, and especially what Kwesi said on Tuesday, to come to this conclusion that the next meeting between Kwesi, Rob Brzezinski, and Mike McCartney is going to be absolutely imperative to sort of going down the path of this is where the Vikings stand with Kirk Cousins and, most importantly, his contract.
I mean, that's a great point, Judd. And when you look at it from like the fan perspective, right? As you said, that this is a fan base that's divided. There's, the Kirk haters and the Kirk stands, whatever you want to call them, right? And what's lost in that is the fact that people who think we hate Kirk or that you at Score North hate Kirk and so on and so forth are missing the fact that we don't hate him. He's a good quarterback. But from a football business perspective, like you just pointed out, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Can we build a team around this guy at that cap hit? Sure, there's other teams that have been successful doing that, except for the main difference here is that we are missing the key pieces that those teams have. So, for example, the Rams just were able to build around Stafford and the cap hit that they had to take on for Jared Goff, which ended up equating out to roughly that amount of money, right? And they were able to win a Super Bowl. Very valid points. They also had a Jalen Ramsey, an Aaron Donald, an Andrew Whitworth, and I can go on and on with these key stud players that we just don't have and can't afford currently because of our cap situation.
And I think the key point, too, is this, because the response of Kirk's biggest fans is, well, get the same players and find a way because the cap is fake around Kirk. My response to that is this. The Vikings took that shot, 2018. It failed miserably. Yep. They didn't make the playoffs. And is that all on Kirk? Certainly not. But they played the Chicago Bears in that last game in which the Bears had the division clinched and had nothing to play for and didn't play their starters the entire game. And Kirk played a terrible game. So Kirk didn't even get them to the playoffs. And that's a game when, if you are going to make what Kirk is, you have to win. Like, you have to say, I don't care if the rest of my team plays like crap. We are going to win this game because of me. So, like, the whole comparison to, well, just, you know what? Then Kevin O'Connell should take Kirk, and the Vikings should make moves, and the Vikings should become the 2021 Rams. I say they took that shot. It didn't work. And now, to your point, you want to build this entire team, and the Vikings are saying, I'm sure, Kirk, here's the salary point, here's the price point at which we can do that. But if you're going to continue to say, I need to essentially be paid like a top 5 quarterback in the entire league, we can't. And it's an incredibly fair business decision if the Vikings say, then we're out. And I don't think that anyone can debate that. Like, to me, that's not a passionate statement. That's not a fiery statement. That is just looking at what you have, what you don't have. And the reality is, Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell deserve the opportunity to build something here. Like, they're not going to come in and be like, let's get Jalen Ramsey and Whitworth. I mean, the Vikings have taken those shots, and that's fun, and that's all well and good. But that's something that's done into your tenure, not when you don't start your tenure by saying, we're going to build a team of veterans right now. You try and draft and cultivate, right? And so we are at a point where it's very fair for the people who are now going to run this franchise to say, we are to a large degree not rebuilding, but resetting the roster. And if Kirk wants to be part of that process, that's awesome. And if Kirk wants to break the bank, my guess is it's not going to work.
And just quick to jump in there too, real quick on that too, is it's in his right to ask for all that money too. I mean, The issue is
Oh yeah.
he not only is asking for that money, but he wants that money in 2-year, 3-year increments, which gives you no flexibility outside of that very first year to do anything with the bonuses and restructuring and whatnot, which puts us in a bind. And that's where, again, I don't know him, I don't know their philosophy or what they're trying to do, but that's what that's the hardest part. Like if he would have asked for like a 5-year extension at 40 million, you could sit there and say maybe. I wouldn't do that personally just because I don't want to hitch my wagon to that for 5 years to a 34, 35-year-old quarterback. But what that would give us flexibility for the next 2 to 3 years to then go and make moves. But it's coupled with the 40 million and the 2-year or 3-year extension that really kills it for our flexibility and our ability to build around him.
One thing I was going to ask you, Judd, I know you reported on your show, I think it was a week or so ago, about the Panthers inquiring on Kirk Cousins. And I want to just preface to everybody listening, inquiring is a lot different than talking about trade details. There's a lot of inquiries, whether it's the NBA, the NHL. A lot of deals are talked about that never happen, and this was just a formal call of like, hey, is Kirk available? Have you heard anything else surrounding that? I mean, I know this is a busy week for the Vikings being down at the combine, so I'm sure there's a lot of rumblings going on. But have you heard anything else outside of the Panthers maybe being intrigued in Kirk Cousins?
Not at this point, but I am sure that they've gotten calls. Because the thing is, you're exactly right. You know, you're always going to get calls, right? I mean, I'm sure teams call and say, hey, on Kirk, would Kirk sign an extension here? I'm just spitballing right now. But the point is that there are around this time of year with March 16th, excuse me, being the start of the league year. There's a ton of conversations. There's a ton of phone calls. I have not heard more, but I really think the Vikings are probably trying to, rightfully so, at this point in time, to take care of their own house, right? Like they have a lot of guys to talk to about restructures, renegotiations, possible moves. I mean, Kirk is the tip of the iceberg of a lot of veterans who probably need to be dealt with as far as contractually. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Thielen's cap hit is 16 plus for 2022. That's got to come down. I mean, there's no question. That has to come down. Now, is he necessarily gone? No, absolutely not. But if he says, hold on a second here, I'm supposed to make that and I'm not going to change it, there's some problems probably. So I think that there's a lot of conversations, a lot of discussions that need to be addressed because I believe as of right now, according to Over the Cap, the Vikings are $16 million plus over the cap. By March 16th, they can't be. So we'll see.
I did just see it.
Sorry.
I was just going to say I did just see a tweet this evening by Sean Borman on Twitter, pretty much saying that the Vikings can, save $19.5 million pretty quickly by just converting the roster bonuses of Hunter and Harrison Smith into signing bonuses. So you would move, Hunter's cap hit of 26.12 to 12.62, and then Smith's cap of 13.46 down to 7.46. So there are avenues to kind of get some of that cap, but to your point, they do have to kind of clean up the mess of the past regime. I mean, there are a lot of aging vets on this team. I heard you guys the other day on Score North kind of listing, restructure, trade, or cut, when you're talking about the Adam Thielens, the Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith. You have to make decisions on some young guys too. I mean, we heard about Garrett Bradbury today from Kevin O'Connell as well, and they're going to have to decide on his 5th-year option coming up. So I see a smirk on your face, Judd.
Yeah.
Do you have something? You have something to say about Garrett Bradbury here?
I played a game with Declan today, and I called it the Pinocchio game. And I said, as it relates to KOC's comments about the line, when does his nose grow? Because he talked about the tackles. And you know what? He's probably right. Those guys are good, right? Like Darisaw might be really good.
Yeah.
We don't know, but he might be. O'Neal is really good for sure, right? Left guard,
Yeah.
Ezra Cleveland. I think he's fine. I mean, he's not great, but I don't think he's a train wreck, and I think he's improving. Right guard, and O'Connell said there, we have great depth. I said, remove the word great, and he's right. They've got some depth there. It's not great. But, his nose grew just a little bit there, right? But when it came to Bradbury, full Pinocchio, woo, like that. Come on, Kevin. Come on. Like, just restructure the answer a bit. I'm not saying you got to rip the kid. You don't have to. But, he's really smart and this is what we're looking for. No, BS. I mean, he is going to, at the very least, I think, or best in his case, have to compete for his job, which he should. But, let's not be telling the fan base complete, because the problem with his Bradbury response is that draws into question everything he says now. So, like, everything he says, I'm like, really? Really? I want to believe you, dude. But if you're going to tell me Garrett Bradbury, I mean, he's blowing sunshine in a place he shouldn't, okay? I don't need that. It amused me. Like, he was fine on tackles, great depth of guard, overstating it a bit, but I'm fine with that. I don't really care. But you're going to tell me
I did find
Garrett
it interesting
Bradbury,
that he said depth, though.
Come on. Yeah, but I mean, he's not right. I mean, he's saying left guard is okay. They desperately need a right guard who is a real right guard. Don't forget, to my dying day, I will feel bad. Oli Udo was a tackle who got a phone call, I think in early July, and said, you're moving to guard. Football fans know that's not some small ask. It's a different position entirely. I mean, that's one of the most unfair things done to a guy, as far as I'm concerned, because they decided they didn't want to play Wyatt Davis, who basically was then put on a milk carton. I mean, the mismanagement of that line is unbelievable. But don't tell me Garrett Bradbury is okay. Come on, Kevin. We're not stupid.
I don't know if you have any light to shed on this, but do you know what happened with Wyatt Davis this year? I think it's one of the greater mysteries of the past Vikings season, right? I think a lot of fans expected him to be something for that offensive line, and he, like, to your point, I like your expression that he's essentially on the milk carton. I mean, nobody knows where this guy is. I know Chris Thomason wrote something earlier this offseason about him and his eagerness to kind of, earn back the trust of some coaches, some fans and whatnot. But do you know what really happened behind the scenes with Wyatt Davis?
So I think
all of the third round picks, for that matter. I mean, literally not one of them really played more than a handful of snaps.
Look at the draft picks. The entire draft, I mean, it's almost like Zim, aside from Darisaw, decided to punish the entire draft class because he was mad at Rick. Like, my thing is, one of the great exploratory things that the new coaching staff can do is find out. It's like they're going to have an entire 2 draft classes because you don't know the 2021 draft class. You have no idea. They basically didn't play. I mean, it's ridiculous. On Wyatt Davis, my understanding is he came into the OTAs not in great shape. Now, my problem with that is this. He's a guard. They ain't exactly in great shape consistently. Like it's not like he was going to be the quarterback and showed up with a pot belly. Okay, that's not great. He did get hurt, but the fact is you moved a tackle who is probably a backup tackle to guard, and you started him, and it's not like there was an option there. I don't understand. I really think that in some ways, and the 2021 draft class is probably the poster children for this. In some ways, the draft class became the children of a divorce between Rick and Mike, because it was like Mike punished them. Like, you can't tell me that all of those players couldn't play. And they basically, aside from special teams, refused to play them. That's incredible. That's an entire draft class that, for the most part, and don't forget too, he was hurt, but Mike was all ticked off for how long at Darisaw. Well, I guess he can't practice. We thought he put, so he was mad at the entire draft class. And I'm telling you, I think it was basically they were the children stuck in a divorce between two adults who could no longer play nice. But O'Connell, what's great there is he can come in. You might unearth that 4 of these guys are great. We have no idea. We never really saw them.
That would be crazy.
Wrong, right? I mean, that guy is an Andy Reid dream. Like, you look at that guy's speed, and I guarantee you there's about 5 or 6 packages that he could have been put into. And what did they do? When push came to shove and they finally played him begrudgingly, after he had not one but 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns. And by the way, nobody has kickoff returns for touchdowns now, aside from Cordell Patterson. They basically said, okay, when he plays, we're going to run him up the A gap and see what happens. I think he's Earl Campbell. Like, he's this incredibly he's got more speed. I saw him in training camp. I was blown away. Like, when he turns the corner, you guys, he doesn't stop. Like, he doesn't slow down. He doesn't put his foot in the ground to slow down. He just keeps going. Incredible speed.
Yeah.
And they used him like they would use just a hard-nosed, big running back. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? It's why the whole thing it's why the whole year drove me crazy, down to the fact that we got the biggest BS excuse, which some of the film experts supported. The Detroit game. Justin Jefferson here, right? Justin Jefferson, first half, 7 catches. Unbelievable. He's going to have a huge game. The Lions rolled safety coverage in the second half, and everybody, including the filmies, said, well, he can't do a thing there. He's covered now. And then I watched the Super Bowl. And by the way, I objected, but I'm like, okay, if you say that, but I don't buy it, right? Because it's like Justin Jefferson. And then I watched this little game called the Super Bowl, and Cooper Kupp was covered by the Bengals. And Sean McVay didn't say, well, we're screwed. Game over. Congratulations, Bengals. He said, I'm going to move Cooper Kupp around because you know what you can't do? You can't roll help consistently when you don't know where the receiver's going to line up, can you? And Cooper Kupp had a fantastic game. And I said to myself, that's Justin Jefferson, guys.
Not only that, though, too, it also takes the play calls, but it also takes the quarterback willing to make the throws into coverage or into tight coverage and giving your elite receiver the opportunity to make the play like he consistently did in the Super Bowl.
How about one play in particular that I can guarantee you Kirk Cousins wouldn't make this play in a Thanksgiving backyard game with his kids? The no-look throw to Cooper Kupp. Kirk Cousins wouldn't. I could go to Kirk Cousins right now and say, Kirk, you and me, let's go out in the street. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to look away and you throw me a dart, but you're not looking at me. He couldn't do that. Couldn't pull the trigger. This whole Bradford and Cousins are the same guy. Okay, first of all, Bradford, willing to make mistakes, which can drive you crazy. Kirk won't make those mistakes. I guarantee you O'Connell's going to learn one thing very early on, and that is when O'Connell says to Kirk, it's all in your hands right now. Like, I've given you everything. I've given you the puzzle. It's put together. Don't drop it. Kirk's going to say, but I got to carry it very carefully, right? And that's where the difference is. Sam Bradford throws picks. That's the reason why he won the Super Bowl. He threw a no-look pass in the Super Bowl late in the game, which could have been a disaster. He completed it. And the other thing, too, is, so now that I'm on a rant here, my other question,
I love
too,
it,
is
Judd.
this
Keep
one.
going.
My other question, too, and I've broached this, Phil and I disagree slightly. So you're going to have Kirk make what he'll consider irresponsible plays, but he has to. Like, if he can, it's not going to work. Those plays are going to have to be, to the most part, to one guy, Justin Jefferson. The path I want to see is this. If Thielen comes back, how is he going to take being option 4, basically? Because the first 3 are Justin Jefferson. So, like, it's always been, right? Diggs and Thielen. Like, we used to talk about them as the same, like, they're one guy. It's unbelievable. And they were both great. I'm not trying to rip either one. But then it became now Jefferson, who is unbelievable. He's here, and it's Jefferson and Thielen. with a competent offensive coach, it's going to be Jefferson. Hey, Adam, what's up? And the whole security blanket of this guy's just my security blanket is gone. O'Connell's going to basically say, no. We are not moving Justin around to get him away from double coverage for your good, Kirk. We're doing it for Jefferson. Ball's got to go to him. So like, there's a lot of variables here that are going to be different that I absolutely love, but they're going to call on people being put into jobs they're uncomfortable doing, and if they can't do them, they're not going to last. End of rant.
That was incredible, Judd. You are the comments we're just talking about. You're just on fire tonight. Rare form from Sports Dad Judd over here.
It's not that rare. I got myself worked up. Oh, Matt Stafford. I'm sorry. I always say Sam Bradford. Doggone it, Matt Stafford. Thank you.
I knew what you were saying. I think the fans will hear it as well. Ryan, I don't know if you have anything to add, but before you take it away here, I just want to let you know I'm on my second Lake Monster beer of the evening. So if you're behind me, you're going to need to catch up because we got a half the show still left in one more beer to go.
You and Ryan are drinking Lake Monster. Judd, what are you drinking?
Oh, let's see here. I've got my, shockingly, guys, my Surly Furious can right here, if I can get that in. But just as importantly, right now, I got my coffee mug, Surly that as well. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my favorite beer, of course, guys. And I'm sure that yours is fantastic, but I am loyal to the fault with my Surly, and in particular, Surly Furious, which right now is fitting because, yes, I just got worked up. Some would say furious about the Minnesota Vikings.
I'm going to need to talk to
not Sam Bradford. I got to get used. I got to stop that.
I'm going to need to talk to Lake Monster and see if they can't hook us up with a little coffee mug there, because
they've got glasses.
Cool. Oh, I know.
I saw it in the
trust me.
shop.
I was there today. I saw it all. We'll chat with them, but. Ryan, I don't know how you follow up what Judd just had to say there about Kirk Cousins. Do you want to keep talking about Kirk Cousins? I'll let you kind of lead the path to the next conversation.
Sure. I mean, just to touch base on what Judd. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you just said, Judd. I mean, that's the key thing here is that you need for all the stats he puts up and all the high completion percentage and high PFF rating and all of this, at the end of the day, football, there is an eye test. There is something about watching a guy play and understanding the nuances of kind of how a player, I guess, like mentally processes the game. It's kind of like the argument of if you bully a guy around, right? There's no statistics around that, but mentally there is a makeup of that does affect the game, right? Same concept here where you have a guy who has all the tools, has all the skills. I mean, literally, I'm sitting here on this show saying Kirk Cousins is a very good quarterback. He has all the right talent and everything. But for whatever reason, there's like what's that called in a vehicle to keep the vehicle from going over speed? Like a governor. Like he can't get the governor off. For the how long has he been in the league? 8, 9 years, 10 years? He can't get that governor off, and that's the issue with him. And it pains me because when we signed him, I was excited, I really was, and I thought that was the missing piece. That's what was given to me, and it hasn't shown up.
That's what we were led to believe, though, Ryan.
Right, exactly.
We were led to believe that Kirk was the missing piece.
Exactly, and he should have been. If he could have taken that governor off, he's probably that guy. His mental fortitude isn't allowing that to happen, and I'm not sure why. I mean, there was that clip that just came out. I thought I saw it on, it might have been NFL Network or it might have just been on Twitter. I can't remember, of him talking to O'Connell back in Washington, and how he says that like once we get a little bit of a lead, I just go into conservative mode. and I play conservative. And like he literally is talking through that, and you can tell O'Connell's like in that. So it's just an interesting, I love the rant, Judd. It's really good. Let's transition away a little bit. I mean, it still might always come back to Kirk because, I mean,
Well,
that's
and
just how this team operates.
that's part of the whole story. We're sitting here looking at the combine. We look at positions we know we need. Defense, there's tons of them, right? Right guard, possibly we need that. Interior O-line, yes. Stuff we need. We normally, as fans, are focusing in on, all right, who's the best? Who's being ranked this? Did we see him play during the season? Do they pass the eye test? Now we're going to watch them run around in underwear, lift weights, do all that nice stuff. That's cool. But everything when it comes to the Vikings rolls around back to the same individual story, and that is what is the Vikings going to do with Kirk Cousins? Kirk Cousins is dominating the whole storyline of what should be, hey, it's all brand new. We got a new GM. We got a new coach. We're building. We're going. Yeah. But it all comes back to Kirk Cousins and yes, he's a good quarterback. Arm talent beyond belief, right? But can he process mentally? I always called it vapor locking when stuff goes off script. We went off script tonight. Then we went deep and we got Judd. Judd was our deep connection. Catches the ball every time, definitely going to the Hall of Fame, right? We went there. Can Kirk, however, that is the question, and that brings it all back. Yes, we can talk about corners, defensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, edge, whatever you want to. But again, the major theme of the combine so far, be it from Kwesi or from Kevin, is Kirk Cousins.
Always. It's always going to come back there. So to kind of go into your point, Dave, trying to deflect away from Kirk just a little bit if we can. Let's just say extension is announced tomorrow, right, Judd?
Okay.
You've had some draft analysts on your show over the last few weeks or so. I know our own Tyler Fornes, who's also part of NBC Sports Edge. He's been on the show, and I know you've had a couple others. And I'm sure you're cultivating a lot of this information and absorbing it and taking it in. So from your perspective, let's say quarterback's not an issue. We're not looking at Malik Willis. We're not looking at Kenny Pickett, any of these other guys. What are, in your opinion, are the important positions we really should be looking at for our, again, our listeners right now who maybe are going to be watching the combine on TV? Who should they be looking for? What positions should they be looking for and most intrigued by?
This is going to be incredible to say because it was obviously a position that was focused on by Mike and Rick a ton, but cornerback. This team doesn't have him. Patrick Peterson might come back, but he might not, and he's good, but old. Yeah. Breland gone, which is great. Alexander almost certainly gone, which is fine. Like he came back, and I'm not saying he was awful, but he came back because he knew Mike, and now Mike's gone. So I imagine McKenzie is gone. Cam Dantzler, I think, can play, but I mean, last year felt like a stunted year for him, right? So like, there's no. I think Dantzler starts, but I'm not going to imply that he is a polished product because he is not. So yeah, I think your first round pick, this is incredible, guys, but I think your first round pick, cornerback, and keep in mind, 2018 first round pick, Mike Hughes, got hurt, got traded. Unfortunate. Your 2020 second first round pick was Jeff Gladney, who, despite all of the talk about, well, we go through the people's personalities, we know our draft picks, a year in, had a unforgivable off-the-field incident in Dallas, was let go, deserved to be, but that's a huge strike because he's gone now. So flat out, I think from a draft position, I think first round, assuming that they stay at 12, they're going corner. They are going corner, and they need to. And that, I mean, I know that fans are now like, what are you talking? Come on, cornerback again? Mike's gone. Draft somebody else. but If you have the opportunity, which right now cap wise would be tough, but if you create the opportunity to dip into the free agent market, I think that they might pursue a corner. I personally would probably pursue a right guard there. But yeah, I think a huge focus both in the free agent market and the draft is going to be a position at which we never thought post Zim would be a need, and now most definitely is.
Zim is sitting at his ranch just drooling at the fact that like if he could have stayed, he could have had an opportunity at another first round cornerback. I just find that
Derek
so
Stein
funny.
Jr.
But unfortunately,
yeah,
I was gonna say, but unfortunately, his first round corners were just not good. I mean, even going back to Trey Waynes, he was serviceable. He wasn't the quality of corner he should have been for that level of pick, right? And I'm really frustrated with the Gladney pick. Not obviously, yes, I'm very frustrated with the fact that he is a complete you know what for what he did. Mm-hmm. But just from a draft prospect perspective, I was looking at Jalen Johnson, who went almost a whole full round later to our rivals, the Bears, and he's out there, putting up great tape, doing an excellent job for the Bears. So it just makes me a little extra frustrated because that's the corner I wanted us to draft, and I was pounding the table for. And I agree, Judd. Stingley out of LSU seems like a phenomenal prospect. He hasn't really ascended as high as most people wanted. I think maybe his growth was a little stunted by some injuries, but from a pure potential standpoint, he's probably got one of the highest, if not the highest, ceiling of any of the corners in the draft. I saw somebody, Dan Henneman, which I don't know if Dan and I in the chat here, I don't know if Dan and I like share the same network in terms of what our brains are connected to, but every year it seems like we're literally vying for the same guys. So he says go grab both Cincinnati cornerbacks, like a first and a third. And I don't know if I couldn't, I can agree more. Sauce Gardner is a cornerback I'm super excited about. He seems like a phenomenal player, good scheme fit. And then on the later in the draft you have Kobe Bryant, which obviously legendary name, but also a very competent and quality corner that could be a solid CB2, CB3 competing with Dantzler. So in terms of additional positions, right? So cornerback, big need, right? We're obviously switching to a 3-4 defense. Obviously, they're preaching to us that we are set up for that. Hunter, he can play 3-4 end, 4-3 D end, right? 3-4 outside linebacker. So we're gonna have a huge need on the other side, though, right? Like we don't have anyone on our roster. I mean, Wanham is relatively athletic. Maybe they think they can plug him in there, but he's just been a disaster since he's been here. I know he's put up some flashy sack numbers and stuff, but it's really not indicative of the actual play he's providing, in my opinion. So edge is going to be probably a need. You had said guard in free agency. Do you think edge might be a possibility in free agency, given what's out there potentially in the market?
All right, so this is a great point, and this comes back to what Dave said, which in the end it all comes back to Kirk, and just as importantly, it comes back to a slew of veterans who are going to eat up a ton of cap space unless they're gone, or at least some are gone. So the thing about it is you can restructure and rework some contracts, but to do what you're talking about, which by the way I agree with completely, you're also probably going to have to get rid of some popular guys just flat out. Hey, you're gone. Sorry, bye. And because ideally in the free agent market, you could vie for, I think, a right guard, a corner, and a defensive end. So exactly what you're saying, but that's where it gets to be a problem when we come back to, but they're going to keep guys just by restructuring, right? Well, restructuring brings things down a bit, but it doesn't fix things. And to allow O'Connell and Kwesi, more importantly, to reconstruct this roster and to get some parts in that this team currently lacks for its system, you are going to have to part with guys who people have their jerseys. So like that's the whole thing about this is that, and this whole thing of, well, just build to the draft. Okay, that's cool, but that takes some time. Like if you're not going to just have a draft class and okay, you're in first place now. So I hear you. I agree with what you're saying, and ideally you could be at least, if nothing else, sniffing around and in the running for some significant free agent upgrades at different positions. But something's got to give there. So, like, is that Kendricks? Yep. Is that Harrison Smith, who I don't think is gone? But my point is, who's going to go for you to replace them with players that will excite not just the fan base, but also help the roster? And I feel like we don't want to deal with that. I feel like we're just all saying, well, you move the money here and you move Hunter's money there and you do this with that and maybe you bring back Barr too, and it's like that's not how this is going to work. That's not how. And the Wolves can sit there and say, well, we plan on being competitive in 2022 all they want, but Kwesi and O'Connell are not dumb guys. They have a plan, and there is no way that they showed up to talk to the Vikings about these jobs and sat down with a binder that said, here's how I want to try and win with the 2021 Vikings. So and that's why I love this, because like right now I'm so curious, but there are going to have to be, starting March 16th, some significant changes that I think the fan base won't like, but are going to lead to a team that's going to be far more compelling and ultimately far different. That might include Kirk, it might not, but Kirk is a starting point here. Kirk is a jumping off point for a lot of guys whose futures, in my opinion, here are uncertain. And when the GM is fired and the coach is fired, that's how it should be. That's the whole plan. You don't fire them to say, let's run her back and see what happens. You fire them to say it's time for a significant change.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I think that's the key point there, right? Like you don't fire Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman both and say, how can we figure out how to get the gang back together and make another run in 2022? Like that's not what's going to happen here. Like there's going to be changes. I know a couple weeks ago when we were at Surly together, Judd, we talked about CJ Ham and how he would maybe even fit in a Kevin O'Connell offense, right? I don't. It's probably a sneaky like cut, but I feel like CJ Ham could be gone from this team, and I know a lot of fans like him.
He was hyping him up
today,
defense, apparently.
And he's got a big.
But I don't know
if they cut him, they're not gaining a whole lot of money. It's only like $500,000,
right?
Because they'll owe him so much money.
Okay, so let's talk about another name here on the Vikings that's kind of been trending all offseason, maybe even a little bit before the offseason, about a speculative cut, and that's Michael Pierce, right? Thought he played out of his mind this year when healthy. But cutting him, I think, saves. I don't have it in front of me. I think $9 million is what I remember, something like that. Like, are we okay with that? Like, this group here on Vikings Happy Hour tonight, are we okay with a Michael Pierce cut, and we're just running with, I assume, Danielle Hunter, Dalvin Tomlinson, and then you'll have to get somebody else to play opposite of that. But
see, I'm not, because Tomlinson and Pierce are set up for 3-4 defense. Those guys played it. They know how to play gap and a half and 2 gap. They're perfect, perfect for that. I just don't see it. Now, the folks that want Anthony Barr back and think they can get him, Over the Cap has him valued at $6.5 million per year. That would be on top of the 14+ million the Vikings still owe him because of the current deal, right, where they voided those last 2 years. I don't see that happening at all, period, paragraph. They're no way going to add, $6 million on top of $14 million and say, hey, we want you back, no matter how good he fits. And he would fit well. It's just, there's no way. You can't do that and start that rebuild, retooling, making in your own image that Kwesi and Kevin want to do. It can't happen. And yeah, there's going to be money adjusted on either on Hunter or on Smith or whoever you see. Some of those guys are going to have their money adjusted. Adam Thielen may have to take a pay cut. He may be willing to take a pay cut, but we have yet to see. But all that stuff has to happen so that we can start the rebuild. And it all comes down to how much money they can free up to get the free agent guard, which is proved better than drafting one because he'll be able to play and not develop because it takes linemen the time to develop. A corner, an edge, whoever you want, all that's got to be taken off all these guys and work to make it happen. So people aren't going to be able to wear, as Judd says, the jersey they bought all the time. It's not going to happen. Those guys are going to move on.
Exactly right. And I think that there's some good talking points off this as well. One is on Hunter. He doesn't talk much. You know what? We don't know. We have no clue if he wants to play in a base 3-4. Now, my assumption is he should because he's just so damn good, right? But like until we hear, oh, hey guys, yeah, I'm jacked about this. He could say, I'm out of here. I'm a 4-3 end. And I don't care if you're just like, well, we're in nickel a ton and that's a 4-3. He might flat out say, I don't want to play in a base 34. And if he does, he might be gone. So like that's one thing to keep in mind. But to go back to my Kevin O'Connell Pinocchio game, there are some things that are flying from his mouth right now that are flat out him. Kwesi and O'Connell were hired to be the anti-Rick and Mike. And that is, they are supposed to get to a mic and be as accommodating as possible, not to quote my beer surly like Mike was. And they're supposed to be like giving a message that is not a flat out lie, but they're also not going to necessarily speak the entire truth unless you read between the lines, okay? I got 3 names for you here. The first we talked about, Bradbury. So if the Vikings come back and say, you know what, Wyatt Davis got screwed. He is our right guard, and he's going to be great. Then their attention is going to turn to getting a center. So, like, somebody's gone here. Like, they're going to make one, I think, major move. It's at center or guard. It's probably not both. That's very expensive. But that's one is. Like, this whole Bradbury thing today jumped a shark. He's just being nice about it. That's a bunch of crap. C.J. Ham, okay? Kevin O'Connell's not going to use a fullback. Like this whole thing about, I see a lot of things, and C.J. Ham, I think is a great guy. I've heard great things. I'm like, he will get a job, but Kevin O'Connell doesn't use, unless he completely goes against his beliefs, a fullback. The odds of him employing that position full time are, wait, hold on a second, wait for it, 0. Okay, so the odds of Ham being here, and he'll get a job, he'll bounce around, he'll make a lot of cash. God bless him. But I'm just saying this can't be like, well, but we liked him. He was a good guy. Who cares? The last one is this one. O'Connell keeps paying lip service consistently to, well, I got 2 tight ends there. And Irv Smith, I think if he can stay on the field, is fantastic. I think he's a hybrid receiver. I think that he can be a star here. But the second guy he's talking about is Tyler Conklin. The last time I looked, he's a free agent. They ain't re-signing him. You know how much he's going to cost? You think that with Irv Smith set to come back here, O'Connell's going, no, screw the 11 personnel. I'm changing that up. I'm using 2 tight ends. Let's pay Tyler Conklin top dollar. That's a bunch of nonsense. Tyler Conklin is going to get paid. He deserves to be paid. It's not going to be here. See ya, bye, end of story. So, like, there's
Judd,
all of these things.
That's almost $8 million a year for Conklin, by the way, per OTC valuation.
We talked about it the other week, though. The free agent tight end market is saturated. There's so many of them. I don't know if Conklin's actually going to get that bag.
But do you really think that they're going to work to bring him back to not play him? Because they're going to count on Irv Smith playing. Like, he's not worth paying with unless they think that Irv Smith can't stay on the field with the packages that they're going to run. They're going to take the Conklin investment small or big, and put it elsewhere, and they should. And I'm fine with that. I'm just saying O'Connell's doing a lot of trying to be a good guy and trying to tell you that your favorite players are going to be back and blah, blah, blah. And ultimately, this guy just won a Super Bowl, not because he's a good guy, but because hopefully he's a great coach. And at that point in time, I don't care what you do personnel-wise. As we continue to say, the goal of Purple Daily is for this godforsaken state to get a Super Bowl, a Lombardi trophy in the trophy case in Egan. And the last time I checked, being a good guy and bringing back fan favorites don't accomplish that.
Correct.
Yep, I agree.
So
And
you're telling me
I really hate the ham point. I really hate the ham point because he lives kind of by me. He's actually like best friends with one of my neighbors. The kids are incredibly great friends. You'd hate for him to have to move on and move to a different state or whatever, but that's the nature of the business.
But there are teams in the NFL that still use fullbacks. But Kevin O'Connell does not use a fullback. So, yeah, you're only saving a little bit of money. Maybe you can trade him for, a late round draft choice. Who knows? But it's still beneficial. If you're not going to use him, why waste the money in the first place when it could go to someplace more productive?
One of those teams that still use a fullback, sorry, I'm going to transition that a little bit, Dave, are the Cleveland Browns.
Oh, package in Kurt and Ham.
Per PFF bet, Kirk Cousins is plus 350 to be the next quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. I assume if we're going to accomplish that, we're going to need to bring in Oklahoma great Baker Mayfield on that deal. Judd,
Ryan, you're fueling the reckless speculation for Score North tomorrow.
PFF bet put it out there. PFF bet put it out there. I have.
I'm just mainlining my surly furious right now.
Right.
Hey,
Judd,
well, we're doing it to Lake Monster,
reckless
so.
speculation. Let's see. Yes, that's right. Reckless speculation. Let's see your thoughts on Kirk Cousins going to the Browns, knowing that likely we need to take Baker Mayfield back in that position.
So I've talked about this before, and I actually would do it because I would let Baker come here, but here's the contingency. Okay, so this is not a Kirk for Baker swap. I'm taking Baker out of the goodness of my heart. Baker is Jared Goff. All right. So I need more from Cleveland in this trade. I need Cleveland's first-round pick. I'm not going to get 2 firsts, but I need Cleveland's first-round pick, and I need a later pick, but not like a bad later pick, not a Spielman special, not a 7th rounder. I need like a first and a third or fourth. I'll take Baker for a year back. I'll give you Kirk and Ham, and that then gives in the Browns' mind their chance. Here's the problem, though, and here's another thing we don't know, is there are going to be circumstances where I think teams would trade for Kirk Cousins, but they will do so and only give you more if Kirk Cousins says, I will sign the extension with you. So, like, right now, I will do, and if the team will pay the going rate, that's awesome. But what if Kirk says no? Because, I mean, Kirk likes to, and it sounds nuts, but it's true, he likes to bank on Kirk. So Kirk could say, hell no. No, I'm playing the last year out, and I'm going to hit jackpot again in March of 23. And the scary thing is, in this league, he might be right. But, yes, I would take a year of Baker back with no commitments after that. So I'm not signing him. I'm doing nothing to get the salary cap relief. And more importantly, for my building team, more draft capital that's good. Like, that's the important thing, because here's the last thing about why I want an additional 23 first-round pick. Supposedly, the quarterback class next year is strong, correct? It's supposedly a good quarterback class, draft class. If I have additional capital, I now have the ability with 2 first-round picks, if they're, let's say, 12 and 21 or something, I don't know, to trade up to get a quarterback. And if I solve that piece of the puzzle. And make no mistake, Kwesi and KOC were brought here to do that. If I solve that, I got 5 years, team control, cheap quarterback. But if he can lead my team, do you know the roster I can build out? And that's not a knock against Kirk. That's just a fact of how this works. And the day that those guys have to be paid is the day that the roster construction takes a hit and changes greatly. I think the way to get this team a Super Bowl is to hit on the quarterback and build. And now you can build around that guy, and you can go into free agency and you can re-sign Justin Jefferson, and none of it hurts. The problem now is everything hurts because of the current contracts.
And you try to hit on that quarterback at any means necessary, right? If you draft Malik, you draft Malik Willis this year with one of our first. Let's say we trade for our first and whatever. You got Baker Mayfield. You're able to get Malik Willis. Let them compete, whatever, right? And then he ends up just being a bust, and we see in practice and in games that he's just not it. Then you go back to the table again in 2023 and go for a Bryce Young or go for a CJ Stroud, whoever it might be, and you keep going and betting until you get your guy, until you get the guy that's going to allow you to have that 5-year window or 4-year window if they have to sit for a year, and allow yourself to really build around that. In the meantime, set the team up for success now and until you get your quarterback, and then you can succeed.
And the last part about that, too, is we have quarterback PTSD because of Rick, right? He whiffed on Ponder badly, and he made that pick in a terrible quarterback draft because it was this, we got to get a quarterback draft. Everyone's got to get a quarterback. Jake Locker goes to you. Blaine Gabbert goes to you. And so you literally took a quarterback in Ponder out of fear of what if we don't take one. That is no way to draft a quarterback. Teddy got hurt, really unfortunate. He might have been really good. I have no clue. But the fact is, after that, Rick got gun shy. So we now assume, well, you got to take your chances because, that's what Rick didn't do. But if the Vikings got the Kwesi and O'Connell hires right, there's a far better chance they're going to know when to take one. So if they look at this QB class and they're like, it's not that good, there's no, we got to take one. Then you're out. But if you have 2 first-round picks next year that can be packaged to go up and get one that you truly like, I'm not saying that guy's a surefire going to be a star, but I think we have to at least operate under the assumption that these 2 guys know what they're doing. And unfortunately, when it came to Rick and Mike and quarterbacks, they had no clue. They just didn't know. There's no good way to put that. Norv Turner found Teddy. So if you liked him, that was Norv. Norv is the one who went to Teddy's pro day, and Teddy threw without gloves and looked like crap, and it was Norv who told those guys, I'm going back down to Florida to personally work this kid out. There's more there. Without Norv, they don't take him.
And I think that's so Kwesi was asked about the quarterback class, and we can sum it. We can wrap it up here pretty quick because we're hitting an hour, but we'll hit on this final topic. Kwesi was asked about the quarterback class this year, and and how it's perceived as weak and whatnot. I found his quotes interesting that he said, well, people said the quarterback class of Watson and Mahomes was also weak. I don't think you answer it that way if you aren't interested in potentially some of these quarterbacks in the top end of the first round. And so I guess the final topic I'll have this evening, and I'll let both of you guys speak on it. Are you in favor? And I think I know the answer, but are you in favor of the Vikings, being aggressive and taking one of these top quarterbacks in what is, considered a weak quarterback class?
Ryan, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm a really big fan of Malik Willis. Apparently he just impressed everyone during his interviews today. He showed that he can understand the mental part of the game that a quarterback needs to know very well to, again, these teams. he clearly has all the tools to be a very successful player in this league. He's got a rocket arm. He's mobile, right? He takes chances, which is something that I don't really care if you turn the ball over. Like one of Kirk's interceptions this year, he just chucked it down to, I think it was Thielen. It was a pick. And I was like, I'm not mad at that because he at least took a chance when he probably shouldn't have, but he still took a chance. And I like seeing that on my quarterback. I haven't seen it in 4 years, so it's a refreshing thing to see, right? Malik Willis will be able to do that. He'll be able to create plays. Outside of that, I'm not sure if I'm in love with anyone else at 12. Kenny Pickett has some interesting aspects of his game. I think he's a gamer. He reminds me a lot of almost like a less arm talented Baker Mayfield, actually, which is kind of funny. But he's a gamer though, and I like gamers. I like guys who are willing to make those mistakes to give your team the chance to win, right? Sam Howell, I'm not sure on. I need to watch more on him. And the other guy I was going to talk about is Desmond Ridder, which, again, very toolsy, he's very up and down, and he's improved every year he's been in the league or in college, but his accuracy was always just kind of, and obviously accuracy is a very important part of playing the quarterback position. So with those four guys, I kind of look at it as potential first-round picks. I know Tyler's going to kill me for not mentioning Carson Strong, but I just don't think that's it. And Matt Corral, which Matt Corral obviously has all of the skills. I'm very excited about Matt Corral. We're just not going to get to see him until the pro day. So he's kind of on the back of my mind because we're not going to see him tomorrow or whenever the quarterback's, I think it's tomorrow or Friday. We're not going to get to see him. So overall, you asked if I'm excited about this quarterback class or if there's any names I'm excited about. Malik Willis, absolutely. Kenny Pickett, maybe. Matt Corral, maybe. But for me in this situation, I'd say Malik Willis or bust. And if he's not there, if he does rise up the ranks high enough to Detroit or to Denver or to any other Washington, any other teams that need a quarterback before we do, I'm probably saying let's go trade back or corner edge, David Ajabo edge, or one of those kind of guys.
So my feeling is this. I was convinced, and I think I'm right, and I think it's part of why he got fired, that Rick Spielman couldn't find one. He just couldn't find one. He was gun shy. I always said this. Why don't you have more people in your franchise who are experts at identifying the most important position in sports? Like, that never made sense. Well, my scouts are out there. Well, great, but like your scouts are looking at guards and quarterbacks. I mean, like this position is so important that I think it takes as close as you can be to being an expert, right? O'Connell now is a former successful college QB who at least played in the National Football League as a backup. He has an OC. He has 2 assistant QB coaches. They've got a passing game coordinator at this point. My point being is now there's a lot of people within the Vikings organization who know what they're watching. And so, not to comment specifically on this draft class, but when they decide to take a quarterback, until they prove that they're incompetent, I'm going to assume they know exactly what they're doing. And I'm going to assume that they are making the right pick, which I think is, I know what I know about this team. And we've all watched Kirk, and we all know Kirk. And I certainly know what I think about Rick and Mike. But the reason why you made this change was in large part because those guys could not identify a quarterback. And so instead of me saying I think that they should take one in 2022 or wait, I think that when they take one, until they prove me wrong, I'm going to assume that they are making the right move. I just like the fact that, at least for now, when my head hits the pillow at night, I'm assuming that the Vikings know what they are watching at quarterback. And I can tell you right now, 6 months back, I didn't think that. And I think I was right. So whatever they decide, bravo, do it. But all I know is this. If you find one, if you get the one, you are set for success. You would have to work to screw that up if that piece is in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus, I have more confidence in them, especially Kevin O'Connell, at
Yep.
developing a quarterback than
100%.
Zim, because Zim didn't focus on the offensive side, not in that way. He wasn't back there, living with his quarterback since Teddy. So that I think
Eh,
Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi, if they can find that guy, I think we're finally going to get over the hump. And speaking of getting
And the
over the
other
hump,
thing that,
who's thirsty?
I'm out, man.
I know. I sat
They're
there and
both
watched
gone.
you. At least I refilled mine. I
a
just
fact.
wish mine was a Lake Monster, maybe a double IPA, say double depth charge, something like that. Something that will, is real efficient, will get you buzzed real quick, and goes along with this great Vikings talk from our guest, the one and only Marconi Award nominee finalist, Judd Zulgad. And for
Yeah,
those
Let's
very
that
go.
much.
don't know radio, being a Marconi nominee, being a finalist is a humongous deal. It means, folks, you are the best in the business. And we want to thank you, Judd, for joining us tonight. You have been absolutely outstanding as usual.
Very
Hey,
kind of you
Judd,
guys. Thank you. Yes, sir.
before we wrap up, do you have any intel you can share with us about the Vikings offseason that's coming up? If you don't,
It's,
I, I don't blame you. I mean, the scouting combine's here, so I feel like the rumors are just starting to heat up. But
right.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask.
Well, I think the fact that the Carolina Panthers called about Kirk, while it certainly does not mean a deal is going to get done, I feel
Right.
that I don't bring to you a solid scoop, but I will say this. I wouldn't be surprised by almost anything that we see in the coming weeks. Again, I'll go back to Daniil Hunter, who's a hell of a player. We have no idea if he's excited about playing in a base 3-4 or he hates it. So, there's so many things. The Vikings are not going to go to a podium and say, oh my God, you should see what we are doing behind the scenes. But I guarantee you, the nature of the beast is things are going on, some of which will come to fruition that will be incredibly, I think, juicy and interesting and ripe for reckless speculation. Guys, thank you very much, though. It's been great.
Absolutely. Well, I wanna give a shout out to everybody in the chat tonight. Judd, everybody loves you. If you didn't know that, I mean, you may get some hateful DMs, but the chat here at Climb in the Pocket, they love you, and I love the energy you brought tonight. Thank you for coming in, and helping us out on this Wednesday night. When you know we had a guest back out, so I appreciate that, and
No worries.
I like I
Glad to help.
like I texted you, I owe you a beer. Um, we're competitors now, so we'll have to figure
Yeah,
out where
well,
that beer is
just don't
coming
forget, I'll
from,
be collecting mine from Surly Furious, okay?
and I will be collecting mine from Lake Monster. So that's why.
I love it.
But for everybody, yeah, in the chat tonight, thank you for joining us. If you're listening to this on the pod on Thursday, or any day in the following weeks, keep coming back here every Wednesday night. It's a fun show on Vikings Happy Hour. Like I announced at the beginning of the show, we are now sponsored by Lake Monster Brewing of St. Paul, Minnesota. We will have more news, events, giveaways, you name it, in the coming months. So just keep coming back. Next week, Ben Gessling rescheduled. He was supposed to be here tonight. Jury duty should be done for him, so he'll be back next week, followed by someone that Judd knows very well. Darren Doogie Wolfson will be here the 16th of March, which is when free agency breaks. So he will be here live
Woo!
with us for a little bit and giving us
Good
all
looking.
sorts of scoops that he can. One of the kindest people in this Minnesota media market. So with that being said, everybody, Judd, Ryan, Dave, thank you. And Dave, I don't know if we have a show tomorrow, so I'll let you send us off.
Yes, we do. Eric Thompson of the Daily Norseman and the great and wonderful, marvelous Flip Mozzie will be doing Viking hot takes. I already have their questions. It's the quickest show on Thursday nights. 6 questions, 20 minutes, and we're out. And can't wait. Then, of course, on Saturday, you get me and Darren Campbell, the 2 old bloggers. We're about the age of Judd himself. Actually, I'm a few years older. And we're going to be talking Vikings football. One of the few things we're going to be focusing on for that one is interior O-line free agents. We talked about it tonight. We're going to look specifically who's available and who might fit and what sort of cost it may cost them, have the Vikings to pay. So, with that, what do we say, everyone?
Skol Vikes.
Skol Vikings.
Skol Vikings. Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skol, everybody.